Khenpo Sodargye Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche.
The profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now that I can hear, receive, and uphold it, may I fully understand the true meaning of the Tathagata. In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us all give rise to the unsurpassed bodhicitta. Today we are having a very special class, and as for the class, according to some deeply cherished previous traditions that we always uphold, in this very first session we will be discussing and exploring in great detail the Song of Victory, a profound and inspiring composition created by the revered His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. Today can also be considered our very first session indeed. I will first recite for everyone the transmission of the Song of Victory. Next, we will discuss the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. This can be considered the start of the second session.
The Konat Nyanga Huerton, Tundam Chapir Karzon, Skarman Sosa Largete, Huerkundal Zanda, Skaramyam, Tilgavritish, Nyanjor Nama, Nenjirun, Kori, Semchan Nama, Tandevi Sala, Uyonsher, the Ajampandim Sanjum Kurdoji, Ranchinzen Hali Division. Aman Nganjur Gumbrandayim Jeda Gumtori, the Horandayim Jen. Tartari Kamsaran the Imjan, Lomama Nyamjin, Dalam Zoda, Yerin Kuru Pansum Tatak, Yamumbi Sambal Hopung, to Larjin, Rovim, Chordom Church, and the Trim Yankim Choto Zone, Shirmuntung Elam Tatak, the Huarkandalatim, the Huarkandalatim Benandal, Nyamnang Andrum, Tamid, Kem, Rango, Mankur. Long term, so the deacon of some should draw down ten, get down some samba, Carla Zona, Pugrandon, Getcher, driven to a council championship among Tondala mature Samazer, Gun Tirsum, Gary, Tamke, Lam Churdomuji, Nyanka Yen, the Mavjid at Lopsor, Nama, Tam Derme, Gavy and Joakan, Onin Corber, Yansa later Jean Vercarden, Gavi, Sus, Keren, of Dirden Jean de Tirish or Jiban Dagan, Rapshum Chudum, Mavshir, Dargapi, Tögal. Trekchö Khonlub Shinan Sansum di Muntumba Yerle Garvia Garton Gitis Gindamba Tomchor Ngala Niwa Zamdi Wis Ngan Lojum Some Pep Churton Lur Langa Gewo Chigur Kupchik Kochiglu Dag Pithy Nirchiglago.
This is counted as our first session, where today we recite a transmission. Next, we should consider the second session. This is because prior to the very first session, I don't want to talk about too many things. The first session is complete. As for the second session, I thought of talking about it tomorrow. That would be fine. But today, there may be a few things that I need to mention to everyone. Today, we will discuss the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. Tomorrow we will also discuss the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. So for these two sessions, I plan to prepare for both of them. There are approximately 23 verses that we need to cover. If there is enough time, I might also talk about nectar drops of advice afterwards. Today, I will delve into and discuss the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, a profound and significant teaching. Regarding the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, it is well known that when the revered His Holiness made his auspicious visit to the sacred Mount Wu Tai, he initially took residence and stayed at the venerable Bodhisattva Peak, a prominent and revered location on the mountain. Afterwards, he went to Shansai Cave. At Shansai Cave, it should have been April 29th at the time, the anniversary of the parinirvana of Mipham Rinpoche, he had a direct vision of Manjushri Bodhisattva. Then, a few days later, His Holiness then moved once again to a prominent spot directly above Shansai Cave, situated across from the majestic Dailo Peak, where there is a gentle hillside. This hillside is called the Dharma teaching platform. It is said that in the past, Manjushri Bodhisattva turned the wheel of Dharma here for 10,000 disciples. So later, some of His Holiness's devoted followers set up their tents there together and stayed for a good few days. When the revered His Holiness arrived at that very spot, he then began to reveal profound teachings that flowed effortlessly from his innate, deep wisdom. We were all present at the time. I remember that I was the one who recorded it then. The Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. At that particular time, His Holiness was living in a simple tent. The entire text, as mentioned in its later sections, should be finished within 23 minutes. It was recorded like this at the time. It was carefully written down in just 23 minutes, a rather quick accomplishment. There was no draft for this either. His Holiness just directly composed what should be 23 beautiful verses. It was meticulously recorded in exactly 23 minutes. It's a truly remarkable piece indeed. As for the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, later, after His Holiness returned to Larunga, he asked us Khenpos to sign up. If anyone wrote a commentary on the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, they would never be separated from their guru, life after life. At that time, about 8 of us signed up. Later, His Holiness said that these 8 people could become the 8 great bodhisattvas when he attains Buddhahood in the future. They could become the 8 great bodhisattvas, but whether that will truly happen, no one really knows for sure. That's precisely what was said. At that particular time, it seemed that 6 Khenpos wrote commentaries in the form of poetic verses. As for a bit more extensive ones, there were 2 who wrote in the form of annotations. Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro, a respected Khenpo, wrote a slightly more concise version of the text. It was called either the Moonlight Commentary or the Sunlight Commentary. I wrote one as well. Mine was the Sunlight Commentary, or something along those lines. Anyway, I haven't really studied it for well over 30 years, so I've completely forgotten about it. I've written it in Tibetan for over 30 years. Later, Khenpo Derpa gave a teaching on it once. Other than that, no one else taught it, and no one else studied it either. So, as for mine, it seems that even in Tibetan, it wasn't considered very successful. Mine should definitely be called the Sunlight Commentary. That's truly the one. This particular one is relatively extensive indeed. Later, I wrote a more concise one, which was more of a literal explanation. So there is such a work. So at that time, I was in my 20s. Now, I am well over 60 years old. So this particular teaching, a Dharma teaching, was from when I was very, very young. At that specific time, everyone at Larungar absolutely had to memorize the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. It was indeed very important, and everyone involved took it especially seriously and thoughtfully. Because the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, was actually a teaching from the Most Precious His Holiness. It was a very important instruction on practice, and also a step-by-step teaching. This year, I basically spent the entire whole winter compiling various precious projects from some rare precious recordings of the year 1993, when the precious and venerable His Holiness gave teachings in the United States. I carefully organized them and recalled some memories from that time. After a while, I can share them with you. Because this very important and meaningful, significant year marks the 20th anniversary of the precious His Holiness's passing from us, and the 30th anniversary of His Holiness's visit to the United States. At that time, there were some teachings His Holiness gave in the US, which I have now fully compiled. This year, I carefully compiled both the Tibetan and Chinese versions, and subsequently spent a great deal of time on both of them. But during the process of his teachings, His Holiness mentioned several times. When practicing the Great Perfection Manjushri, the main sequence to follow is that of the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. The Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, should be considered its most crucial supplementary practice. So I think for all of us really here, in our future practice too. The main practice is the Great Perfection Manjushri by His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. If you study the Great Perfection Manjushri, you need to understand this sequential method. It must be practiced according to the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. So these two are therefore complementary to each other and cannot be separated. That's why, even though you didn't actually request it this time, really, over the past 30 years, indeed, although I have great confidence in the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, and feel that it is very important, perhaps no one has requested it in Chinese, nor has it been translated. This year, as I was writing it, I feel the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, is very important. I wrote my own commentary, but none were completed or in hand. However, I basically managed to translate the verses. So over these 2 days, I will share them with everyone. Because if we were to explain this in detail, it could be discussed for a very long time. And it would definitely take a long time to cover everything. But this time, due to time constraints, I will go over the outline of each verse and the literal meaning of each verse and give everyone a brief introduction. If we want to go into even more detail, we can look at it quite slowly in the future. So for this particular time, we will just give a relatively brief and concise introduction to everyone present here. In this way, regarding the Heart Essence, my heart's advice by His Holiness to explain this treatise, it can be divided into the beginning, the middle, and the end, 3 parts. So it's divided into 3 aspects. The beginning is also divided into the title, the homage, and the vow. Again, 3 aspects. First is the title of the treatise itself. The Heart Essence, my heart's advice. Everyone knows what heart's advice means. As a spiritual teacher, the deepest teachings that he gives to his disciples, the most profound instructions are loyal advice, words from our hearts, spoken from the bottom of one's heart. As for heart essence, it is explained through a metaphor. It's truly like the most essential and vital drop of our very own heart, which is the very essence. That is the teachings from the really deepest part of our mind. The essence and the heart that follow can also, in a broader sense, be understood as or interpreted as the heart's essence drop, the heart's quintessence, the heart's very core. That's the meaning. In other words, my truly heartfelt words, my consistently loyal and sincere advice are actually the most profoundly precious things emanating from the deepest part of my mind. That is the intended meaning. That's the title of the treatise. The second is the verse of homage. As for the homage verse, I'll recite it once more in Tibetan, because at that time the revered His Holiness personally wrote it down while carefully transmitting it to us for the very first time ever. We should be considered among the very first to receive this transmission. You could say we received a direct blessing from a close transmission. You could put it that way. At that time, His Holiness, after completing the composition of the Heart Essence, my heart's advice, said that he would immediately give everyone an empowerment of 4-armed Manjushri. At that time, there wasn't even a Dharma throne. We went around gathering stones from everywhere to make a Dharma throne for His Holiness. Later, I went to see it and paid my respects there. Now that place has been slightly renovated. It looks like a very small pavilion now indeed. Inside there are some photos on display. I think I went there twice. Because we first went there in 1987 and then again sometime in the 1990s. Originally in 2017, some of our related volunteers went there on a pilgrimage. But at that time, the schedule was too tight. We only had 2 days. With just 2 days, it was really impossible to manage. Actually, I really wanted to go at that time and everyone was going together. But back then, the atmosphere at Wu Tai Mountain wasn't quite right either. The weather was windy and rainy everywhere, making conditions rather unpleasant. So we were all feeling a little bit anxious. At each historical site we visited, we genuinely couldn't really take our time to fully explore. But even so, at that particular moment, it was still a fairly complete and quite fulfilling trip. All the related Dharma friends made aspirations. Back then, back in those days, His Holiness went in 1987 and we went in 2017. So 2017 was exactly 30 years later, right? That's quite remarkable. So looking at it now, this was also a very rare and auspicious karmic connection. Those Dharma friends who had supported me for many years back then, I usually couldn't really repay them for anything at all. Some esteemed Khenpos, Khenmos, and other Dharma teachers also went along with us. Altogether, there were probably a few hundred people. People from all different places and various backgrounds were there. We hurriedly made our aspirations and then went to Shansai Cave, then to Loyan Cave, and to Bodhisattva Summit. At that time, Bodhisattva Summit. Guru Padmasambhava had not yet entered into retreat there at that time. Later on, we also went to the sacred Vajra Cave. We also circumambulated and made aspirations at the White Stupa. And finally, we went to Qingliang Monastery, the place where His Holiness went. We went there. This was something I did deliberately. At that time, I also led them there. 5 years earlier, I had made a promise to them. Those who had volunteered at that time, it was probably around 2012 or 2013 back then, A promise was made, and then I took them there. I wanted to visit the site where His Holiness composed The Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice. We initially went from the Upper Shanzai Cave, then proceeding to the south from Dailo Summit, we arrived at this particular place. It's situated relatively high up, precisely at that specific spot. Now it genuinely seems there aren't any other temples located there anymore. There's only a small, simple pavilion. The road conditions are quite good now, but back in those earlier days, it certainly wasn't very good at all. However, despite that, we still managed to pitch our tents there. I don't remember exactly how many days we stayed there. Anyway, that particular place was indeed profoundly important. This winter, I also roughly translated a guide. More than 30 years ago, I personally wrote a comprehensive guide to the sacred Mount Wu Tai, a guide to pilgrimage at Mount Wu Tai. I can show it to you, everyone, later as well. I'm really not sure about this. If you go on pilgrimage, some things might be useful. What I mean is the usual things, like what's here, what's there. I didn't really write much about those. Most of the places of Mount Wu Tai are temples. These are manifestations of Manjushri Bodhisattva, scriptures and treatises I read. The Tibetan passages I excerpted from them. This year I felt that just keeping them in Tibetan, people might not understand. I heard that some Tibetan lamas and nuns often use this, and later, when it was translated into Chinese, maybe for some people it became a bit more accessible. I don't know, perhaps we can talk about it a little later, if that is indeed possible. This, you see, is truly the heart essence, my heart's advice from the sacred Mount Wu Tai. What am I saying? Now I'm a bit, because of the altitude sickness. Or maybe this year things aren't quite very clear either. So what exactly was I talking about just now? The title of the treatise has already been explained. And the one I just recited, the first one I mentioned, the treatise title has been explained. Next is the homage verse. As for the homage verse, may the youthful son of speech Manjushri, in his enlightened form with its signs and marks, embodying the secret of all the infinite Buddhas and their bodhisattva, turn your minds to perfect awakening. This is His Holiness's prayer to Manjushri Bodhisattva. What is Manjushri Bodhisattva like? He embodies the essence of all Buddhas of the 3 times, as well as all Bodhisattvas of the 3 times. The 3 secrets, body, speech, and mind of all of them, are fully gathered together in Him. When all the various causes and conditions have ripened, they manifest body-adorned marks, signs, perfection. This body auspicious marks, whose perfectly adorned body is this. The youthful son of speech means mastery over speech, shining like the sun. The youthful son of speech is the name for Manjushri Bodhisattva. Now, Manjushri Bodhisattva appears in the form of a youthful prince. The youthful son of speech has eloquent and masterful language. Just like the sun, his speech illuminates everywhere without exception. Such is the youthful Manjushri. The great His Holiness says, I most sincerely wish to pray to Manjushri Bodhisattva. You are the embodiment of the 3 secrets of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Please guide these devoted disciples who share this significant karmic connection so that their minds may turn toward the ultimate path of enlightenment. This is indeed very important and a crucial aspect of our spiritual journey. We often pray with deep reverence to our revered teachers and to the compassionate and wise Manjushri Bodhisattva, hoping that our minds will not turn toward the lower, more base and earthly realms, nor become entangled in samsara. Our minds should enter into the dharma and then progress toward liberation and the path of enlightenment. But simply wishing for liberation is not necessarily enough. Therefore, we rely on the blessings of Manjushri Bodhisattva. Everyone who hears the heart essence, everyone who studies or who contemplates the heart essence, my heart's advice, may have their hearts completely turned toward the path of enlightenment. Everyone should pray to Manjushri Bodhisattva and His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. They are actually inseparable and not different from each other. If we just pray frequently indeed, we will truly and definitely receive many great blessings. In fact, whether it's a person and their yidam, or the relationship between a person and their guru, communication is very important. People abroad often call this a connection. This connection is very important. For example, if I often prayed to Manjushri Bodhisattva, or pray to Guru Padmasambhava, he will also pay attention to you and bless you. If I never pray or visualize at all, I may not necessarily receive blessings. So His Holiness also said at that time, Manjushri Bodhisattva, you are the embodiment of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. You must bless these disciples of mine. With this meaning, I believe that each of us has received the blessings of Manjushri Bodhisattva. If you have the opportunity, you should visit Mountain Wu Tai in the future. Going to Wu Tai Mountain is wonderful. It's different from other cities. Some of you go to Thailand, some say you go to other places, and that's fine too. But personally, I feel that Wu Tai Mountain is very beneficial for our body and mind. If you happen to have a little bit of extra time, back then we actually stayed there for a full 100 days. It should be a truly very good experience. But let's not discuss Wu Tai Mountain at this moment, otherwise there would simply be far too much to elaborate upon and explain. This is the first verse of homage. The second is the vow verse. What is the vow verse like? There are countless dharma, profound and extensive, suited to the mental capacities and inclinations of beings. By gathering all the key points in a way that can be practiced, I offer this pithy advice to you, my friends, as dear as my own heart. Shakyamuni Buddha left us a great many teachings in this world. These teachings correspond to the boundless and limitless aspirations, faith, understanding, and capacities of sentient beings, all of which are different. Therefore, at that particular time, the Buddha did teach the profound teachings of the view and vast teachings of conduct. These Dharma principles are vast, a sea of clouds, boundless and limitless. There are so many. If you look at the Tripitaka, the Chinese Tripitaka is so extensive. The Tibetan Tripitaka is extensive, and other language Tripitakas exist. Thus, the profound and extensive Dharma teachings are especially very abundant in our world. If we want to practice them, not to mention practicing them, even just reading through them in this short human life during the degenerate age, it is difficult. However, the practice condenses all these essential points. In reality, can only be accomplished by great accomplished masters like His Holiness Rinpoche. All of the Tripitaka, all of these teachings, when we condense them, hard advice, pith instructions, I wish to transmit these teachings, hard advice, to my spiritual friends. When I say spiritual friends, I truly mean the closest, most intimate, and deeply cherished friends. His Holiness was very humble towards his own disciples, consistently referring to them as spiritual friends or companions on the spiritual path. Perhaps we have also been significantly influenced by this profound approach. Some lineage masters, when teaching, refer to their disciples as my disciples and so on. The teacher would say to everyone, my disciples, this or that. But generally, perhaps due to His Holiness's influence, even though it's correct to say your disciples, we all tend to say our fellow practitioners should really pay close attention. It's a respectful and appropriate way of addressing each other as true equals. So His Holiness, with his profound wisdom, stated that if we were to meticulously summarize and distill all these vast and boundless essential teachings, they would indeed become a highly condensed set of pith instructions, thereby offering you a truly transformative and exceptionally profound teaching to transmit to my spiritual friends, my disciples. If we were to fully explain the profound meaning of this, in actual fact, this is a condensed version of the Great Chariot commentary on resting in the nature of mind, the Great Perfection. If the sequence was explained more extensive, if you expand the Heart Essence, My Heart's Advice, Gelug's The Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, the Tantric Stages of the Path, treatises. If you look from the Nyingma tradition, it's the Great Chariot commentary on resting in the nature of mind, the Great Perfection, as well as the Ornament of Liberation, and other schools' teachings are essentially the same. All of these profound teachings are condensed into a single comprehensive instruction. So this is indeed what His Holiness mentioned earlier. Why did he compose this treatise? Because for people like us, this degenerate age, our wisdom limited, our energy limited, and our faith limited. Everyone feels overwhelmed. So many volumes in Tripitaka and treatises. What should we do? How do we practice? But if you don't understand this point, when you look at the My Heart's Advice, basically these teachings have been condensed into it. Wow, the path of practice is like this. It's very clear. Actually, this is very important. We are still very fortunate to have encountered someone like His Holiness who provides such a systematic Dharma path. This is called the vow statement. Everyone should know this. Next, the middle part is divided into two aspects: the fundamental basis of the path and the true principle of spiritual practice. So, the very first, the essential and fundamental basis of the path is divided into eliminating adverse conditions and relying on favorable conditions. When it comes to practice, it involves eliminating adverse conditions and relying on favorable conditions. First, the elimination of adverse conditions. Let me recite it in Tibetan. Should you be attached to this life, you'll have no chance to practice the Dharma. The more you indulge your desires, the more your craving will only increase, and you'll never find satisfaction. Wealth, happiness, fame, and praise. To pursue them is like buying and selling in a dream. Let go of such concerns. This is called seeing through the affairs of this life. The first is eliminating adverse conditions. What is the first adverse condition in our practice? An adverse condition is when we are attached to this present life, to my reputation in this life, my worldly wealth and possessions, my body, my enjoyments, and so on. In this case, the causes and conditions for practicing the Dharma are already gone, have been left behind. Why is that? Because the various worldly forms, sounds, smells, and tastes, all kinds of sensual pleasures, the more you indulge in them, it's like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the more your craving grows. It never ends. If you have 100,000, you want 1,000,000. If you have 1,000,000, you want 10 million. If you have 10 million, you want 100 million. If you have 100 million, you want 1,000,000,000. All these worldly pleasures are inexhaustible in their enjoyment. Desire and greed cannot be restrained. They just keep increasing more and more. So if you haven't seen through this present life, there really isn't much to it. For example, the 8 worldly concerns: benefit, pleasure, praise, reputation, and so on. These are the things we often refer to as praise, criticism, slander, and fame. More specifically, these encompass the pursuit of happiness, the accumulation of wealth, and the favorable recognition and praise that we genuinely enjoy hearing and receiving. These 8 worldly concerns, the positive aspects we long for, and on the flip side, we reject the negative aspects, the 8 worldly concerns. People in the world care about them deeply. If that's the case, there will never be an end to it. It just goes on and on endlessly. If you spend your whole life chasing the 8 worldly concerns, then it all becomes meaningless. It's just like doing great business in a dream, making a lot of money in the dream. But when you wake up, it all turns out to be nothing. It's exactly the same, completely meaningless. So, as a practitioner, the first thing you should do is to put aside all worldly fame, status, wealth, and so on, all these various kinds of worldly blessings, to cast them out of your mind and let them go. These are obstacles to the path. So when His Holiness teaches in the West, he mentions this: the sequence, the heart essence, my heart's advice. If you want to practice, the first thing is to see through the world. Second, rely on a qualified teacher. Third, uphold precepts, listen, contemplate, and practice. Practice by contemplating the rarity of human birth. This sequence makes me think, why am I only talking about it today? If I had explained it to everyone earlier, perhaps we could have avoided some detours. I feel I have a deep connection with the heart essence, my heart's advice. Today, I spent the afternoon in meetings and didn't prepare for class. But I should remember everything, right? The outline and structure from back then. I was quite young and spent a certain amount of time writing it all down. So this is very important. Everyone here should also reflect on this. Are we truly living like practitioners? If we really are like practitioners, the first thing His Holiness said is to eliminate adverse conditions. The main obstacle to our practice is our attachment to this life. Just like in A Precious Garland of Mountain Retreat Instructions and in Opening the Door to Mind Training, texts talk about seeing through the affairs of this life. In Han region, it is also often said that seeing through this life brings freedom. It is indeed very important to see through the affairs of this life. If you can see through this life and let go of many things, then your practice will naturally be very successful. But if you are clinging to people, to wealth, and to everything else, never letting go, then you lack the conditions for practice. So the first point in what we are discussing today, you yourselves should also, this time I won't use scriptural or logical proofs. This is roughly the meaning of what His Holiness said back then. I believe I understand it clearly as well. So if you want to practice, the first thing is to see through the world. That's the first point. The second is to rely on favorable conditions. Now, the second point is relying on favorable conditions. Your virtuous qualities will develop and increase, and all your faults and failings will be cast away. By relying on qualified teachers and serving them in the 3 ways and accomplish others' aims. Relying on a spiritual teacher, relying on favorable conditions, then a spiritual teacher. What does this mean? The cause to increase is listening, contemplation, and meditation, as well as virtues like compassion and bodhicitta, and to avoid the faults of greed, anger, and ignorance. What is the most fundamental source of all these? A spiritual teacher possesses the proper qualities. You know the qualities of a guru. Both exoteric and esoteric traditions have teacher criteria. Dzogchen has specific ones. Each tradition has its own teachings on this matter. A spiritual teacher with proper qualities to rely on with 3 joyful devotion. The highest type offers service through practice. The middling type serves by attending to the teacher. The lowest type gives material offerings. If you rely on such a qualified teacher in these 3 joyful ways, if you practice the 3 kinds of joyful devotion, the 3 precious kinds of sincere joyful devotion, then all your wishes will be fulfilled, will be completely fulfilled. Whether you seek temporary liberation or ultimate liberation, or ultimate happiness, you will truly attain it all. So, in this line, it is simply explained that when we are practicing the path, it is not enough to simply see through the very affairs of this world. First, you must seek out and follow a very good spiritual teacher, a qualified teacher. In this way, your merit will naturally increase, and your faults will naturally and completely disappear away. So for those of us present here, basically, our own conditions and causes are all in place, more or less. The first is to see through worldly matters. This is an adverse condition. The second is a favorable condition. A favorable condition is that everyone should find a very good spiritual teacher. This is the second point. Earlier, we talked about the basis for the path, and now the basis for practicing the path. These 2 have been explained. As for the true principles of practicing the path, now comes the second part, the true principles of practicing the spiritual path. This is divided into a brief explanation of the stages of the path and an extensive explanation of the stages of practice. The brief explanation of the stages of the path is pure discipline, wisdom born from hearing, then wisdom born from contemplation, and wisdom born from meditation. These 4 sections briefly explain the path stages: pure discipline, wisdom from hearing, and wisdom from contemplation, and wisdom born from meditation. These are divided into 4 aspects. First, the very first is pure discipline. Just as gardens are not to be found growing in mid-air, all the bounties of the higher realms and liberation will never be yours as long as you lack true, strict moral discipline. So with deep, sincere mindfulness, awareness and caution, control your restless, wandering mind. Here it is clearly said that pure discipline is indeed very important. Why is that the case? Because without pure discipline, all other temporary and ultimate spiritual merits are simply unattainable. So what exactly is pure discipline? Let me use an analogy to explain. For example, imagine you are in the sky, hoping for a particularly beautiful paradise or a truly magnificent garden, or perhaps an amusement park. If you try to build it in the sky, it's simply impossible, because it would be like a castle in the air. If we want to obtain a garden in the sky, a paradise in the sky, it definitely needs a foundation, otherwise it cannot be realized. In the same way, the higher rebirths in this world, and the ultimate attainments beyond this world, all these worldly and transcendent riches for those individuals who have broken their sacred vows, even if they once possessed them, but later unfortunately lost or completely broke them, or for those who have never taken any vows at all. For such people, it is impossible without pure discipline. For example, bhikshus, bhikshunis, shramaneras, shramanerikas, or upasakas, upasikas, or those with only refugee precepts. If you don't have that, you have no foundation. Nagarjuna Bodhisattva said in his letter to a friend, "The earth is the basis for all moving and unmoving things." In the same way, discipline is truly the fundamental basis for all virtues. Therefore, the very foundation of all virtues is indeed discipline. Now, here among us, there are many monastics who also place great importance on the precepts and value them highly. And some lay practitioners, whether it's the 8 precepts or others, whether it's their lay precepts or refuge precepts, this is indeed very important. If we want to obtain a human body, it is truly difficult without any precepts to be reborn in a favorable realm in the next life. So if there are no precepts, all the virtues of higher rebirth and definite goodness are simply impossible. Therefore, one should be endowed with clear awareness and mindfulness, and use vigilance to discipline one's own mind. With clear awareness and mindfulness, carefully tame your own mind with right awareness and right mindfulness. Everyone who has studied the Bodhicharyavatara knows what is meant by mindfulness. Mindfulness means not forgetting virtuous actions. Clear awareness means observing body, speech, and mind. Non-negligence means being extremely cautious. By means of these 3 methods, we should constantly tame our minds. In fact, this is truly very important. First of all, as Buddhists, if we are lay people, at the very least, we should uphold the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. This is very important. If we are monastics, we must truly cherish the precepts we have received and diligently protect them as we would our own eyes. We must uphold them with such right mindfulness and clear awareness. If we lack these, then we cannot begin to cultivate worldly or transcendental virtues. Therefore, according to view of Master Nagarjuna, precepts are the foundation of everything. So for each of us spiritual friends, although it is becoming increasingly difficult to keep the precepts in this degenerate age, especially now in the age of the internet, it may be particularly challenging for young people. But no matter what, if we do not have pure precepts, it is impossible to attain either worldly or transcendental virtues. Just now, actually, the first was pure precepts. The second is the wisdom that truly, indeed, comes from hearing. The profound wisdom gained through listening, the wisdom truly born from attentive hearing. Up to now, you have wandered as if crazy and without a guide through the vast darkness of unknowing and beginningless existence. So now, in order to find the great palace of peace and happiness, it's right that you take joy in studying the ocean-like teachings. We sentient beings, from beginningless time up to today, have been drifting in samsara's darkness alone, coming and going, born alone. Like madmen, we do not know to accept or reject. In fact, we sentient beings are truly pitiable. We do not know how to discern or make choices about many issues. We are completely like people gone mad in a wilderness. Exactly the same, all the way up to today, in the boundless cycle of birth and death. We have never attained liberation. Now, in order to truly attain both temporary and ultimate bliss, that is, the great palace of liberation and supreme happiness, to attain such profound liberation, what exactly should we do now? We should joyfully and attentively enjoy listening to the vast, boundless ocean of the Buddha's sacred teachings. Why we sentient so pitiable? Because we have never heard the Buddha's teachings. So now, all of you present here, some of you may not have accumulated good karma in your past lives. So when you hear the Dharma, you either get sleepy or your mind wanders off, or you give rise to all sorts of discriminating thoughts. The true wisdom of the Buddha cannot merge into your own mind. This is especially pitiable and truly a shame. Moreover, the opportunity for us to hear the Dharma is also extremely rare and precious. In an entire lifetime, there may not be many such chances. Including all of us present, we should reflect on this carefully. In the future, the opportunity to listen to the Dharma may not be available for a long time. Don't think because I attend daily teachings, there's nothing to worry about. Or there's no problem listening to teachings from Khenpo or Khenmo. In future, necessary conditions may not be present. So when we have the opportunity now, we must cherish listening to the Dharma. Very important. Some people may not have the chance, but later, through recordings, audio files, many people are still diligent. This is something worthy of rejoicing in. Some people never interrupted study and contemplation. They maintain self-discipline. They have always had a sense of self-control. This is especially commendable. This is the first stage according to His Holiness. Hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Hearing refers to this. Next, wisdom from contemplation. Hearing alone will not be enough to eliminate misconceptions. Faith in the teacher and teachings will not come easily. So, through 100 forms of debating, explaining, and composing, gather the elixir of mind that is the wisdom born of reflection. The second is the wisdom born from contemplation. If we only listen to the Dharma teachings, all kinds of doubts will still arise within us, as well as various harmful wrong views. These afflictions cannot be simply cut off just by merely hearing them alone. Moreover, it is very difficult to develop unwavering faith in our teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, and in the authentic Dharma that he taught. It is hard to generate true, unshakable confidence. It is difficult to truly believe in the Buddha and Dharma. Simply listening to teachings is not enough. So what should we do? After listening, why can't we develop genuine faith in the Dharma? Actually, this requires constant training. How should we train ourselves continuously? We need to repeatedly and persistently reflect in many ways. Or rather, we must temper ourselves 1,000 times over, or try every possible method. By thinking deeply many times, giving teachings, or engaging in debate, or by composing treatises. We often provide guidance, frequently explore and discuss, doing this many times. It's not enough to just listen to a single class once. Nor is it enough to listen to 2 classes or read 1 book. It's not like that. If you want wisdom from contemplation, it comes from long periods of diligent practice, reflection, and constant training. After this, eventually, the wisdom born from contemplation becomes deeply engraved in your mind, and it is etched very deeply. You could say that from the depths of your own heart, you develop a true and unwavering faith in the Dharma and the Buddha. This is how genuine, unshakable faith arises. So, what His Holiness means is that just listening once is definitely not enough. Some lay practitioners just listen once and say, I've heard this or that. But even if you've heard it, it might just go in one ear and out the other, remaining only on the surface. If you repeatedly review, attend classes and engage in discussions, constantly debate and compose treatises, then eventually your faith will become stable. Only at that point will you truly understand that this is precisely what the Buddha is truly like, and this is what the Dharma genuinely is. So everyone should keep reflecting in this very way, again and again. You need to contemplate in this manner. Then the 4th point. Just now we talked about discipline, listening, and contemplation. Next comes practice. As for practice, even the most erudite of teachers with vast scriptural learning can repeat words like a parrot without taking them to heart. But when death suddenly arrives, this will only bring regret. So rely on the essential meaning of the teachings, my heart friends. His Holiness said that those who are widely learned and knowledgeable about various schools, these great masters, great Khenpos, great Geshes, great and distinguished Khenmos, and so on, as well as some esteemed and renowned tutors and Dharma teachers, even though it may truly appear that you are indeed a veritable and accomplished Tripitaka master, and you are excellent in teaching and all other aspects. But if the Dharma you have learned has not tamed your own mind, your greed, anger, and ignorance, in fact, greed, anger, and ignorance are truly terrifying. When greed arises, you are unable to counteract it. As for anger, especially anger, that powerful emotion, we Tibetans have a saying, if a person has a hot temper, they end up destroying themselves. If a horse is hot-tempered, it will jump off a cliff. Sometimes people can be very impatient, right? I'm like that myself too. It seems like the older I get, the more often I just always seem to end up criticizing others. After I say something, I really regret it. But once it's said, it's already out there. It's especially embarrassing, truly humiliating in front of others. My entire character is laid completely bare before everyone. So, our temperament, this is also one of the primary reasons for not having fully tamed our anger. Generally speaking, whether a person is a man or a woman, if someone has a truly steady mind, even if they are already very angry deeply inside, it doesn't show on the surface, as if they are like the ocean. That is a very important quality for a practitioner. Actually, some people aren't practitioners. In the world, there are some who are truly broad-minded and generous. You really can't tell it all. For example, if I criticize them, you still can't see any reaction. They might have some reaction inside, but actually, people like this are very happy. They also won't show their rough side and expose it in front of others, preferring to keep their vulnerabilities private. Sometimes, even if we try to learn this, we might not succeed. Maybe people have their own afflictions that get triggered. And sometimes it could be habits from past lives. Some people are very irritable, extremely so. Once their afflictions arise, even if Shakyamuni Buddha himself appeared before you, holding a begging bowl to advise you, you still wouldn't even be able to do absolutely anything about it. No matter who it is, people like this, truly in this world they bring quite a great deal of inconvenience, both to themselves and to others. So these great Dharma teachers, if your mind is not tamed, there's no difference between you and a parrot mimicking speech. A parrot recites Om Mani Padme Hum, it says Om Mani Padme Hum, and these Dharma teachers, whether it's logic or the middle way, when they lecture on 5 treatises, they speak eloquently and skillfully. But if their minds are not truly tamed, in the end, there's really no difference from a parrot. And when death suddenly arrives, you end up full of regret, maybe clutching your chest with both hands. I've spent my whole life teaching and expounding the Dharma. I've spent my whole life studying and researching the Dharma. But now, when facing death, I have no confidence at all. In fact, when a person dies, having no confidence is most shameful and pitiable thing. If you have practiced all your life, said in King of Teaching Sutra, all of our worldly relatives are worldly possessions, including wealth, status, and also reputation. None of these things can be taken with you. Only virtuous deeds will follow you. The King of Teaching Sutra talks about this in many places. There are two versions of the King of Teachings Sutra in Chinese, and in one, Shakyamuni Buddha spoke to a king, saying that when you die, you can't take anything with you. The only thing you can take with you is your virtuous deeds. I remember this is also mentioned in the Compendium of Training at that time, Bodhisattva Shantideva in the Compendium of Training also quoted a really large section about this. So this is extremely very important indeed. At that moment, you might feel regret. Therefore, all the teachings we have learned, you must truly integrate them into your mind. Let the Dharma merge with your heart. This is something all of you, my Dharma friends, must do, dear friends of the heart. This is also a kind of exhortation that comes later. Actually, if we indeed put it in Chinese terms, dear friends of the heart, you great Dharma teachers, if you have not tamed your own mind, if death comes suddenly, the cause for regret will be there. If you put this kind of exhortation from later on at the beginning, that's also fine. It's perfectly acceptable to place it at the start. This is simply a way of addressing everyone. Now, as we mentioned earlier in the outline, there is an extensive explanation of the stages of the path. It's divided into a brief explanation and a detailed explanation, because practice is very important. His Holiness will explain this practice once again. Then, how to practice. This will be discussed below. The explanation of the stages of the path is divided into a brief and a detailed explanation. Actually, I think that at the time, these words from His Holiness were directly expressed and recorded as they were spoken. At that time, Khenpo Tsultrim Lodra was probably there as well, and I was there too. A few of us were all present at the time. It seems that Khenpo was cooking for His Holiness then. He was busily stir-frying delicious dishes. We were standing right by the side of the large tent at that particular time. We wrote things down while slightly raising ourselves up, and later when we looked at it, it was all there. This year I realized, among the profound sacred teachings His Holiness gave in America, in North America, His Holiness was deeply, completely absorbed in the moment. Every word was eloquent and well-formed. Everything directly recorded turned like this. If it were us, we might think deeply times over. Moreover, what His Holiness said afterwards was that it was all recorded in 23 minutes. It really was like that. I was a witness. To have recorded in such a short time back then, and now, looking at the writing style and content, including the sequence and structure of his words, they truly possess a powerful blessing. I hope if you have confidence yourself, you will also take these teachings seriously. There is a unique blessing power within them. It's not that I praise them just because he is my teacher. That's absolutely not the case at all. The more deeply I reflect upon it now, I realize these teachings of His Holiness were not the result of lesson planning, nor from referencing all sorts of books, nor from racking his brains and then composing treatises. It's not really like that, drafting over and over again, like when we used to write our essays, writing one, erasing another, and so on. It's not like that all. The words just flowed out directly and became an article. Moreover, after finishing many of his writings, His Holiness could memorize them himself, which is very rare. Such is the case. Next, I'll talk about the brief and detailed explanations. This practice is especially important. Let me emphasize it. All the infinite teachings of the Buddhas are imparted purely as a means to subdue our own mind. Don't put your faith in words alone. I urge you once again, let the key points of the deeper meaning seep into your hearts. His Holiness said, Shakyamuni Buddha spoke of these teachings as vast as the great ocean, which should refer to the 84,000 Dharma doors taught over 49 years. But ultimately, if you sum them all up, they are all skillful means for subduing one's own mind stream, all about taming one's own mind. So, as His Holiness already mentioned earlier, you should practice diligently. Otherwise, it will be just like a parrot repeating words. Once again, His Holiness earnestly exhorts everyone, it is important to not become overly attached to specific words themselves, even if the words that are spoken every single day are truly beautiful and profound, even if your eloquence and debating skills are excellent. These are all just attachments to beautiful words, and they are ultimately meaningless. It's just like when we sing songs. There's no real meaning. You must truly integrate the profound, essential meaning into your heart. Regarding the rarity of human life, we should understand and realize its preciousness through our practice. Bodhicitta is very important. When it comes to pure precepts, it's not enough to just understand them in theory. We must recognize the importance of maintaining pure precepts. In this way, with every single verse, because in resting the mind in its nature, each chapter is like this, right? Here, it is every single verse, and the meaning of each verse should be thoroughly understood and integrated into your heart. Only in this way can you practice. This is what His Holiness emphasized. Practice is extremely important. Everything the Buddha taught is actually really about practice. For all of us here, the question every day is whether or not we are truly practicing. If we are not practicing, then just listening to teachings doesn't really have much effect. Giving teachings doesn't have much effect. Spreading dharma, benefiting beings, or diligently doing chores daily may not have real effect. Most crucial is Buddha's teaching. And the instructions given by the masters must be integrated into our hearts, which truly change. I used to have a bad temper, but I have changed. Or I used to be very lethargic and sleepy, but now I have really changed. Or I now have thoughts about death and impermanence. Only at this point can we say that our practice is grounded and fruitful. Otherwise, many things are just superficial or similar in appearance, whether it's building magnificent temples, or calling people every day to persuade them about something, or as many people do now, creating group chats. Even when creating group chats, you need to be mindful. Didn't we talk a couple of days ago about people being sent back? One of our Dharma friends was taken away by them because they said he had created too many groups. So now, whether it's chanting the Buddha's name or other things, even if it's just a group with a few people, sometimes I even worry about the group chats with my own siblings, even though we haven't done anything in those groups. And some of you have very good intentions. In this day and age, you still need to be careful. Otherwise, when the time comes, it's very easy to break the law these days. You don't even need to actually break the law, as long as they have an excuse. That's enough. This is my warning to everyone. Some of us have created a lot of groups. Just how many? The other day, someone said there was a person who had created 32 groups. In the end, all of these ended up turning against themselves. Maybe your original intention was good at the time, but some are for fundraising, some for all sorts of reasons. We think that now these things are complex. The groups in the secular world and related to Buddhism, are completely different. Whether it's the overall governance of Buddhism now, or its current administration, or many policies, maybe you don't study them. But if you don't, it really is a bit risky. Only when you end up in prison yourself will you possibly understand. So I hope everyone will still don't think that just because nothing happened before, or that nothing happened to others who did these things, that this is a good thing, that this is a fundraising group, that this is a sutra recitation group or whatever. There are so many groups. By saying this, I may make a mistake, but I'm doing it to protect you and the Dharma. Now, you all need to pay attention yourselves as well. Otherwise, a lot of things could potentially happen indeed. There are all kinds of truly different eyes in our entire vast space. You may not be able to see them, but they can all see you. You need to be careful about these things. Even though these are all indeed very virtuous acts, actually what's most important now is to focus on your own practice. That's how I think about it myself. In the past, over a span of 10 years, from 2007 to 2017, I truly taught the Dharma extensively because everyone was in tune with the times and knew what needed to be done at that time, what the external circumstances were like, and what the inner winds, channels, and essences were like. Now is the time for everyone to focus on their own practice. It's not about promotion, nor about liberating sentient beings. Liberating sentient beings and generating bodhicitta is wonderful, but sometimes you can't help others. On the contrary, you might get caught up. Maybe I'm trying to scare you with this, but I've said this many times before. Some Khenpos and Khenmos didn't listen and only realized it after they got involved themselves. Maybe I'm just trying to scare you, but maybe I'm not. Some things I said a few years ago, later on, some people realized, you had predicted this before. I didn't listen, otherwise I wouldn't have ended up in such a terrible situation. Afterwards, I kept regretting it while I was in there. I cried and prayed to you, but at that time, even praying didn't help me. The karma had already ripened. At the very least, we have a pretty good understanding of the world and the current situation. So everyone really should pay close attention as well. You all should be aware of what's been happening recently. Maybe by saying this, a lot of good roots will be destroyed as a result. But there's nothing I can do. I still have an altruistic mind. I don't have any jealousy myself. No matter how much money you made by creating groups, it doesn't benefit or harm me in any way at all. But sometimes we should know the right timing. We should truly know the perfect right timing. The Buddha is one who knows the right time, who truly knows the right time. He knows precisely what should be done at what time. So now you see, even His Holiness here says, everyone shouldn't be attached to external things. As long as you practice the supreme teachings well, the true Manjushri, Great Perfection, bodhicitta, and emptiness, you should first cultivate these yourself and tame your own mind. If you come to Larung and your mind is not tamed, even if you stay here for 30 years, it won't be of any use, really. After you leave, if your anger is still so severe, if your greed is still so strong, if your temper is still so bad, then even if you are here, let alone staying here for 30 years, even if you stayed for 300 years, it would be meaningless. It truly wouldn't mean anything. But if you stay here for just 10 days and your mind is completely tamed, then that already has meaning. Taming the mind. This is the key. His Holiness also repeatedly urges everyone to tame their minds. This is a brief explanation, and the next, the detailed explanation. The detailed explanation is divided into three aspects: the common preliminary practices and the uncommon preliminary practices, as well as the main practice itself. The main practice, three aspects. The common preliminary practices have four aspects: rarity, human life, and impermanence life, the law of karma and its effects, and the suffering of samsara. These are divided into four aspects. First is the truly rarity of human life. The Tibetan transmission recitation is now finished, isn't it? Human body is difficult to find, like an udumbara, more rewarding than precious gems. To find it again in future will be difficult, so don't let it pass without accomplishing the highest. There are a lot both in the words of my perfect teacher and resting in the nature of mind. But His Holiness summed it up in just one sentence and then said, a human body endowed with the 18 freedoms and advantages is rare as the blooming udumbara flower, extremely hard to come by, and once obtained it holds a truly exceptionally great significance. This significance considerably surpasses that of 100,000 wish-fulfilling jewels indeed. Therefore, such a precious opportunity may not be available to us in the future. In the future, for many of us to obtain a human body again, rebirth as a human with freedoms and advantages is truly not easy. To possess the precious human body and be able to practice virtuous dharma, such a human existence is extremely rare. Therefore, now that we have obtained a human body and are under the guidance of a qualified spiritual teacher and have the opportunity to practice the Buddha Dharma, you can accomplish great purpose. What great purpose can you accomplish? You can attain liberation in this lifetime, whether it is the fruition of the Shravaka path, the state of an arhat, or the stage of a bodhisattva. Even the state of Buddhahood can be accomplished. At this time, you must absolutely not be lazy or negligent. Don't sleep in every day. So, when you have truly obtained such a precious human body, it is important to recognize that our human body is very easily lost or quickly destroyed. Therefore, you must try your utmost best not to be negligent or careless in its care. Not being negligent is very important, but if you are quarreling with your Dharma friends and feeling troubled, then in fact, having a human body doesn't have much meaning. So try to have fewer afflictions, right? You need to maintain good interpersonal relationships. Nowadays, many of our volunteers and some people end up with poor interpersonal relationships, harming both themselves and others. This phenomenon is very common. I am also a witness to this. When many people do volunteer work, I think their motivation may be very good now, but it may not have a good beginning and end. Because nowadays, many people end up unable to handle interpersonal relationships. They only see all the faults, and in the end they ruin themselves. It's really quite pitiful, and that is the first point. Second, I'll finish explaining 4 preliminary practices. In that case, maybe it's okay if we run a little late today. Afterwards, you should all go back and get some sleep as soon as possible. If you can't help it and are used to sleeping, it's fine to sleep now. I'll allow it. Once I finish talking, those of you who need to sleep, go and sleep. The second point is the impermanence of life. Our great enemy, the Lord of Death, arrives like lightning from the sky, and nobody can predict when and where he will strike next. So you can ill afford to be idle, waiting months or even years. Right now is the time for virtuous Dharma practice. As for this great enemy, the Lord of Death, it's just like a bolt of lightning or thunder. It unexpectedly strikes you directly on the head. No one truly knows the precise moment when it will arrive. Truly, death comes extremely quickly and with astonishing swiftness. I think that this year I've encountered death 3 times for me too, from our Tibetan New Year until now. From the day we held the Vidyadhara Dharma Assembly until now, I've encountered death 3 times. Each time it was just a matter of a few seconds. 3 times I didn't die. As for the details, because of time constraints, they're fascinating, but I won't talk about them now. So really, in just a second or a few seconds, wow, luckily, if there had been a slight difference, I would have died. Just a bit more, and I would have died. Fortunately, just a tiny bit more, and I would have died. It's just like that. So if there's even the slightest thing wrong, each of our lives is extremely, extremely fragile. It's like a thunderbolt, like lightning. No one knows when it will strike. So for all of us here, it's impossible to know how many years, months, or days we have left. It's very, very difficult to predict. So now, while we still have the opportunity, we must immediately start practicing. We must begin our spiritual practice right away. Look at the situation during the 3 years of the pandemic. How many lives were taken? Whether it's disasters of earth, water, fire, and wind, or our own bodies. Now, for those of us who are a bit older, even during our meeting at Larangar yesterday, people were asking, how did you sleep? How is your health? This is a little bit of a sign of old age, isn't it? Young people usually don't really ask these sorts of questions. But when you're older, people ask, did you manage to fall asleep last night? Young people think, whether I can sleep or not, what does that have to do with you? But as people get a bit older, they become most concerned about their physical body. So death really does come very quickly. None of us should think, I'll definitely still be here next year or the year after. This just shows that you haven't really contemplated the impermanence of death at all. As for us worldly people, even those who are already old saying the same things, everyone knows the impermanence of death. I won't talk about it anymore. That's the second point. Now the third point, for all beings, actions will not go to waste, but will bear fruit. And when karma ripens, there's no way to change its outcome. So now, while you're fortunate enough to have some influence, if you still insist on deceiving yourself, who then will protect you? This law of karma never fails, the karma of all sentient beings. Not even a tiny bit of it will be wasted. If someone has created karma in the past, once the result ripens and comes upon you, there's nothing you can do to change it. Many fixed karmic results are like this. No matter how much you want to change it, there's just no way. Even if the Buddha were to place his miraculous hand on your head, he still couldn't change it. When karma manifests, the karmas of sentient beings are not destroyed even after 100 eons. When conditions come together, the result will ripen. This is how karma works. Once it manifests, there's nothing you can do. So now that we have the right conditions, rely on a spiritual teacher, have obtained a human body and possess the authentic dharma. When you are truly free and at ease, never ever deceive yourself in any way. If you deceive yourself, you are the biggest liar. If someone else deceives you, that is certainly not the greatest liar, because you yourself are fully aware, you know exactly what your own situation is. But if you don't earnestly practice virtuous deeds and still commit negative karma, then you truly are a liar, and the harm you do to yourself is especially frightening. So the only thing in this world, all our happiness and suffering are all manifestations of karma and its results. Everyone understands this principle clearly. I think no one doesn't understand these principles, except perhaps for those new to Buddhism. But for many of us, it's very difficult to actually put them into practice. Especially for those whose negative karma is manifesting, it's harder. So we often pray. In Mipham Rinpoche's Illuminating the Path to Liberation, we pray to the Guru. That realization arises from understanding human life's preciousness, impermanence, karma, and samsara's suffering. So this is truly very, very, very important. If you really deceive yourself, then who can save you? The one who loves you most in this world should be yourself. If you even deceive yourself and still continue to create negative karma, then on this earth, no one can save you. You are beyond help, so to speak. Now, the last verse of our 4 preliminary practices, which is also the last one we'll discuss today. Today's session might have been a bit longer, but that's all right. If merely thinking about samsara's various sufferings, which are unbearably intense, causes you to shudder, ask yourself, what will it be like when body and mind actually undergo these countless forms of dukkha? In our worldly existence, the unbearable sufferings of the 6 realms of samsara, such as the pain of birth, aging, sickness, and death in the human realm, the pain of heat and cold in the hell realms, as well as the suffering of hunger in the hungry ghost realm, and so on, and the suffering of ignorance in the animal realm, these, even just thinking about them, even just imagining them in your mind, is very difficult, indeed very frightening. Just as it is profoundly said in the ancient Letter to a Friend, even seeing a painting of the hell realms makes one's hair stand on end. If the ripened result were to actually manifest on your own body, how could you handle it? How could you face it? So when we hear the sufferings of hell realms, sufferings of hungry ghosts, sufferings of animals, sufferings of the human world, they are terrifying, making our hair stand on end, filling us with fear and dread. If we commit negative karma now, in the end, within samsara, we end up suffering in the hell, hungry ghost, or animal realms, then countless sufferings will torment you. And when your body and mind are tortured, what should we do? We really need to reflect on this ourselves. We should also contemplate and think about it over and over again. Right now, everything is fine for me. Truly, today we are human beings. But tomorrow we could become an insect, or tomorrow we could potentially be suffering in hell. It's really hard to say. So the suffering we experience in samsara now, we haven't thought deeply ourselves. The suffering in the human world pales in comparison to real suffering. The suffering in hell, the suffering of hungry ghosts, is truly unbearable. So while we are still free and at ease now, we should do our best not to create negative karma. We should try to cultivate compassion for all sentient beings. In the cycle of samsara, if we ever fall into it, how many years, how many eons will it take before we can attain liberation? Everyone should be clear about this. So all of these are methods of genuine practice. If we discussed it in detail, it could be explained extensively. But today, I'm giving a symbolic overview. This time regarding the heart essence, my heart's advice, I am giving you guidance. Please reflect on it carefully. The content is very simple, but putting it into practice is difficult. It is important for a practitioner, even if we practice nothing else. If we can integrate the 23 verses of the heart essence into our own hearts, then we can actually become a truly very good and dedicated practitioner. Everyone should make an effort in this important regard. All right, we will conclude our discussion here for today.
Jibun Zolen Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye